A black teenager gave his only coat to a homeless man freezing on the sidewalk. Minutes later, the man revealed something that brought him to tears. Jamal walked along a busy avenue in New York City. He was 16 years old and wore an old winter jacket with frayed sleeves. The sidewalk was crowded, and the sound of car horns filled the air. Bright signs and store windows offered warm clothing and expensive items he could never afford. Cold wind hit his face, and he tried to pull the jacket tighter around his shoulders. He noticed his toes felt numb through his worn shoes, reminding him how thin his socks were. He lived in a small apartment with his mother in a poor neighborhood. His mother worked long hours at a grocery store, but she never earned enough. Jamal helped when he could. He took odd jobs like delivering newspapers or carrying groceries for neighbors to earn a few dollars. Still, it was never enough. The landlord had already warned them about the overdue rent. If they did not pay soon, they might lose their home. As he moved past people carrying shopping bags and stepping into heated stores, Jamal felt the difference between his life and theirs. He wondered how it would feel to enter a cafe and not worry about the price of a hot drink. He thought about the stack of unpaid bills at home and the fear he saw in his mother's eyes every time the landlord called. Jamal tried to keep his head up, but these worries followed him everywhere. The memory of his father weighed on him. His father passed away when Jamal was very young. Without him, there was no financial cushion, no extra support. Jamal learned that life was hard and unfair. He tried his best in school, but thoughts about money and survival never left his mind. Each day, he felt older than his 16 years because of the responsibility he carried. The pressure grew stronger lately. They had only a few days to pay the rent, or the landlord would force them out. Jamal's mother mentioned it that morning, her voice trembling as she explained that their savings were nearly gone. Jamal wanted to help, but he did not know how. He felt trapped, walking through these cold streets with no idea how to change their situation. As he made his way down the avenue, he saw a man sitting on the sidewalk. This man wore thin clothes and looked much older, with a gray beard and tired eyes. He had no proper coat, just a worn blanket draped over his shoulders. His hands shook from the cold. He looked like he had not eaten in a while. People passed by without stopping, as if he were not there. Jamal slowed his steps and observed the man. The temperature was low, and the wind only made things worse. Jamal thought of his own problems and how little he had. Still, he had a roof over his head, at least for now. He had a mother who tried her best. He had something warm to wear, even if it was old and thin. This man seemed to have nothing. Jamal stood at the corner, uncertain. He remembered how hard life was for his own family. They could not afford to lose even a few dollars. Yet, he saw the man shivering on the ground and felt a pull inside him. He thought about what his father would have done. His father believed in helping others, even when they had little. Jamal wondered if giving his jacket would make any difference, but he felt that doing nothing would be worse. He hesitated for a moment, looking around at the busy street. No one else seemed to care about the man. Jamal realized that if he walked away, the image of the man's trembling hands and thin clothes would stay in his mind. He remembered the few dollars in his pocket and decided to act. He approached the man quietly. The man looked up, surprised that someone had stopped. Jamal took off his jacket. He immediately felt the cold air against his arms. He held out the jacket and said, "Here, please take this. It's not much, but it's better than nothing." The man looked at him, then at the jacket. He nodded and thanked Jamal in a low, shaky voice. Jamal reached into his pocket and found his last few dollars. There was just enough to buy a small coffee and a basic sandwich from a nearby street cart. He told the man to wait and quickly walked over to the vendor. He handed over his precious change, got a steaming cup of coffee and a wrapped sandwich, and returned to the man's side. "Here," Jamal said. "It's not much, but I hope it helps." The man's eyes watered as he took the coffee and sandwich. Jamal felt the cold on his own skin now. He was giving up his jacket and what little money he had left. He knew this would not solve his own problems, but at least he could help someone else today. Jamal watched the man take a small sip of coffee. The man's hands were still shaking, but now he had something warm to drink. Jamal hoped it would make even a small difference. He took a step back, uncertain of what to do next. He had done what he could. Without a jacket, Jamal began to feel every gust of wind. He shivered. He realized that he had given away what little warmth he had, but he did not feel regret. He had seen real hunger and cold in that man's eyes. He understood that small acts of kindness mattered, even if they did not solve everything. Jamal was about to turn and continue home when he noticed the man looking at him with a strange expression. Jamal did not know what it meant, but he decided to head back anyway. He had done all he could think of, and now it was time to face his own problems again. He took a few steps away, feeling the chill, and wondered what tomorrow would bring. Jamal stood near the man he had just helped, trying to ignore the cold. He had given away his jacket and spent his last few dollars. He thought about his mother at home, waiting with worries about the rent. He wondered if he had made the right choice. He was not sure, but he could not take back what he had done. He remembered his mother's warnings that morning. Time was running out. The landlord would come soon, expecting money they did not have. Jamal knew that the few dollars he spent on coffee and a sandwich would not have made a real difference in their rent, but at least it could help this man through the next hour or two. Nothing seemed to improve for Jamal and his mother. Their situation was tough. Still, as he looked at the man holding the hot coffee, he felt a sense of calm. He had done something decent. As he turned to leave, the man called out to him quietly, "Young man, please wait." Jamal stopped and turned around, unsure what to expect. The man's voice sounded steadier than before. Jamal approached him again. The man looked at him with calm eyes and asked, "Why did you help me?" Jamal shrugged and said, "I don't have much, but you looked cold and hungry. I couldn't just walk by." The man nodded. Then he did something Jamal did not expect. He reached into his worn clothes and pulled out a thick bundle of cash. Jamal stared, confused. Why would a homeless man have money like that? The man held it out and said, "I want you to take this. It's for you." Jamal took a step back. This made no sense. He asked, "What is this about?" The man explained, "I am not actually homeless. I am a wealthy person. I came here to test people's kindness. I wanted to see who would help someone in need without expecting anything in return. Many passed by, but you stopped. You gave me your jacket and your last few dollars." Jamal felt his heart pound. He looked at the bundle of money. It was too large to count quickly, but he could tell it was a lot. The man continued, "You proved that you are kind. You helped me when you had almost nothing to spare. I want you to have this money. It's $5,000. Jamal felt tears in his eyes. $5,000 was more than he had ever seen at once. It was enough to pay the rent and the bills that weighed on his family. He could help his mother and give her peace of mind. He could not believe what he was hearing. It felt unreal. He managed to say, "Thank you. I never expected anything like this." The man nodded and said, "I don't need your thanks. I only ask that you continue to be kind." With that, he stood up and walked away. Jamal watched him go, still holding the money tightly in his hand. For a moment, Jamal just stood there, stunned. He felt tears run down his cheeks. A few minutes earlier, he had almost nothing. Now he held $5,000. He could not wait to get home and tell his mother. He started walking quickly, feeling the cold wind bite into his skin, but it did not bother him as much now. He had hope. As he walked, Jamal wondered how his mother would react. Would she believe him? It sounded like a story made up to explain money that came out of nowhere. He knew it was true, and he would tell her every detail. He imagined the relief on her face. They could pay the rent now. They would not have to move out. They could buy groceries without fear. Jamal realized that he was shaking from excitement, shock, and the cold. He tried to calm down before entering the building. Their apartment was small and old. The paint was peeling, and the heater did not work well. But it was home. He climbed the stairs, still clutching the money. Inside, his mother sat at the small kitchen table, sorting through papers. She looked up when he entered. Her face grew worried when she saw him without his jacket. Before she could say anything, Jamal placed the money on the table and said, "Mom, I need to tell you something." He explained what happened, step by step. He described how he saw the man shivering on the sidewalk and how he gave him his jacket and bought him coffee and a sandwich. He told her about the man's surprising revelation and the bundle of money. At first, his mother looked shocked. She asked him if he was sure it was real. Jamal nodded and showed her the bills. They checked the bills carefully. They were real, crisp, and new. His mother began to cry. She said, "Jamal, this money can save us. We can pay the rent, and we won't have to leave." Jamal felt tears form again. He reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. He told her he only wanted to help that man, not knowing who he was. Now they had this gift that changed everything. They sat together at the table, both relieved and overwhelmed. They talked about how to use the money. First, they would pay the rent. Then they would settle some overdue bills. After that, maybe they could save a little. Jamal thought about how this could give him the chance to focus on school and think about his future. He thought about using some of it for his education, even if just to buy books or prepare for college in a few years. His mother worried that someone might try to take advantage of them, or that there might be a catch. Jamal understood her fear, but he remembered the man's words and the look in his eyes. He seemed sincere. He had no reason to trick them. Jamal believed that he had simply been rewarded for showing kindness. They both knew this money would not solve every problem forever, but it would give them a chance to breathe. It would give them time to plan. Jamal's mother smiled through her tears and thanked him for his good heart. Jamal felt proud, yet humble. He had done what he thought was right, without expecting anything in return. As the evening wore on, Jamal and his mother felt safer. The landlord's threats no longer loomed so large. They would pay what they owed and have money left. Jamal understood that this did not mean their struggles were over, but it was a start. It was a chance to move forward with less fear. Jamal looked at his mother and said, "It's going to be okay now." She nodded and placed a hand on his shoulder. He could tell she was still processing everything. He was too. But for now, they had what they needed to keep their home. Jamal would remember that single act of kindness for the rest of his life. He knew it would guide him in the future whenever he faced hard choices. Jamal and his mother sat at the small kitchen table late into the evening. The bundle of money lay before them. Jamal's mother touched it carefully and looked at her son with a mixture of disbelief and concern. She understood the value of this amount, but part of her worried that it was too good to be true. "Are you absolutely sure this man just gave it to you?" she asked. Her voice sounded calm, but Jamal saw the worry in her eyes. He understood her fear. Money did not usually come this easily, and their lives had always been shaped by hard work and short supplies. Jamal nodded. He said he was wealthy and was testing people to see who would help him. "I gave him my jacket and bought him something to eat. I didn't expect anything in return. He surprised me with the money." His mother looked at the bills again. She counted them twice to be certain. The amount was correct, $5,000. She picked up a sheet of paper from the table and made quick calculations. She wanted to see how far this money could go. They could pay the rent they owed and still have enough left to cover the next month. They could pay some overdue utility bills and buy enough groceries to fill the small pantry. Jamal watched her face relax slightly as the numbers worked in their favor. Jamal spoke quietly. "I know it seems strange, but I believe him. He had no reason to trick me. I saw the look in his eyes. He was honest." His mother sighed. "You are a good boy, Jamal. You gave up what you had to help a stranger. It might feel odd that he turned out to be rich, but maybe this is our chance to breathe. Still, we must be careful. The world does not always reward kindness, so I worry this could bring trouble." They decided that they would go to the landlord first thing in the morning and pay the rent. That would give them some security. Then they would buy essential supplies and set aside money for future expenses. Jamal also thought about putting some of it toward his education. He wanted a better life than the one they had been stuck in. His mother smiled at that idea and agreed that it was important to think ahead. As the night grew late, they moved the money into a drawer. They had no safe, and the apartment door's lock was old. Jamal's mother suggested hiding the money in different places, just in case. Jamal agreed and spent some time dividing the bills into several small piles. He placed them in envelopes and tucked them in spots they hoped would not be noticed by anyone. Later, Jamal lay in his small bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the man on the sidewalk. The man had tested the kindness of strangers, and Jamal had passed the test. Jamal felt grateful for the unexpected relief. He also felt the weight of responsibility. This was more money than they had ever handled. He wondered if neighbors would notice any changes. People in their building talked, and everyone knew everyone else's business. It might not remain a secret for long that they suddenly had enough money to pay rent and buy better groceries. Early the next morning, Jamal and his mother headed to the landlord's office, which was down the hall. The landlord lived in the building and managed several units in the neighborhood. He was a tough man who never gave them extra time to pay. Jamal stood behind his mother while she counted out the money in front of him. The landlord looked surprised. He muttered something about them finally paying their dues and wrote a receipt for the balance. On the way back to their apartment, Jamal's mother said, "That felt good. We can stay in our home, at least for a while. We have time to figure things out." Jamal nodded, relieved. He knew they should keep a low profile, but he felt a sense of freedom he had never experienced before. They went to a small grocery store nearby and bought basic items: milk, bread, rice, beans, some vegetables, and meat. Jamal carried the bags home, noticing how people glanced at them. He hoped no one asked how they suddenly had enough money to buy more than the cheapest staples. He remained quiet, focusing on his steps and hoping to avoid questions. Back inside, they arranged the groceries in the cupboard. The fridge, which usually looked almost empty, now had a few items that made Jamal feel secure. He knew it was still not a fortune, but it was enough to reduce the constant stress. He felt lighter, as if something heavy had been taken off his shoulders. In the afternoon, Jamal sat by the window, thinking about his future. He could not simply waste this chance. With the rent paid and some bills settled, he could save part of the money. Maybe he could talk to a guidance counselor at school about scholarships. He had never considered that before, since he assumed he would need to find work as soon as possible after graduation. Now he had a small cushion. He could try to improve his situation for the long term. As the day went on, Jamal's mother found an old notebook and began making a list of expenses. She wanted to track every dollar so they would not lose control. She planned to call some companies they owed money to and settle those bills. She encouraged Jamal to keep some money aside for his education, telling him that if they planned well, they could stretch these funds far enough to make a real difference in his life. Jamal and his mother knew that their problems were not completely over. They still lived in a struggling neighborhood, and they had to be careful. The money did not turn them rich. It only provided some temporary stability. Still, they felt thankful for the opportunity to breathe a little easier. That night, Jamal locked the door and checked the windows. He understood his mother's warning about being careful. People might talk if they learned about the cash. He hoped no one would try to rob them or pressure them to share what they had. For now, he kept quiet and focused on doing what was right for their family. The next morning, Jamal woke up feeling more rested than usual. The panic about rent had eased. His mother seemed calmer too. She got ready to go to work at the grocery store, feeling relieved that at least they were not facing eviction this week. Jamal planned to go to school as always. He did not want anyone to notice a big change in his behavior. Before leaving, his mother said, "Keep the door locked if you stay in after school. Do not talk about the money to anyone. We cannot afford to draw attention." Jamal promised to be careful. At school, Jamal tried to act normal. He listened to the teacher, took notes, and worked on a writing assignment. Still, he could not stop thinking about the money. He thought about how he could now help his mother more. He also considered that he could save up for college applications. He knew this sudden wealth was not permanent, but maybe it could open doors he thought were closed. When classes ended, Jamal walked home. On his way back, he passed some neighbors who greeted him. He nodded back, trying to appear natural. As he climbed the stairs to their apartment, a man who lived down the hall approached him. This neighbor was always curious and sometimes pried into other people's affairs. "Hey kid," the neighbor said, "I saw you and your mom carrying more groceries than usual. Did you come into some money?" Jamal tried to remain calm. "We just managed to pay off some things," he said. "My mom worked extra hours and we finally caught up." He hoped this explanation would satisfy the neighbor. The neighbor squinted, looking doubtful. "Must have been a lot of extra hours," he said. "Well, good for you." He shrugged and walked away, but Jamal felt uneasy. Even a small change could raise suspicion. He realized that people paid attention to details he never thought mattered. Inside the apartment, Jamal locked the door and sat at the table. He looked at the empty envelopes and the list his mother had made. They had paid the rent and bought groceries. Now they still had some money hidden around the apartment. He wondered if he should find a safer place for it. Maybe a bank account. But a bank would ask questions, and Jamal was not sure what he would say. He was too young to open an account on his own, and his mother might prefer to keep the money hidden. When his mother came home, Jamal told her about the neighbor's questions. She looked worried. "We must be very careful," she said. "People will notice even small changes. We should keep our spending simple and not draw attention. We can buy what we need, but we cannot look like we suddenly have plenty of money." Jamal agreed. He realized how delicate their situation was. The money helped them solve problems, but it also created new concerns. His mother locked the door and checked the hallway through the peephole before speaking again. "We should consider using this money very slowly. We should only spend what is absolutely needed. The rest we hide well." They spoke quietly, afraid that thin walls might carry their voices to curious neighbors. They placed some of the money behind a loose panel in the closet. They tucked another portion under the old mattress in Jamal's bed. They did everything they could to ensure no one would find it if they broke in. A few days passed. Jamal continued his normal routine. He went to school, came home, did chores, and helped his mother however he could. He still wore his old clothes and tried not to show any sign that their situation had changed. He did feel less hungry and noticed that his mother seemed less stressed, but they remained cautious. One evening, while he did homework at the kitchen table, he heard voices in the hallway. Someone mentioned rent, money, and strange luck. He pressed his ear to the door and realized the neighbors were gossiping. They did not have solid information, but they guessed that something unusual had happened with Jamal and his mother. Jamal felt a knot in his stomach. He had hoped that by keeping quiet and spending modestly, no one would suspect much. He knew that if rumors spread, they could face trouble. Someone desperate might try to steal from them. He remembered that their lock was weak and that he had no real way to protect their home. They had to stay alert and maybe find a better hiding place for the money. Jamal considered talking to his mother about possibly renting a small safe or even opening a bank account with her. He was not sure what the best solution was. The next morning, Jamal and his mother discussed the rumors. She decided it might be best to address small concerns directly if anyone asked. She could say that she found a temporary second job or received a small inheritance from a distant relative. Just enough to explain why they could finally pay rent on time. They would need a believable story that did not draw too much attention. Jamal nodded. He understood that this was not ideal, but they had to protect themselves. The money was a gift that allowed them to stay in their home and plan ahead. They did not want to lose it because of gossip or someone's greed. His mother made it clear that if anyone confronted them directly, they should remain calm and stick to their simple explanation. No details, no mention of a man on the sidewalk handing them money. Jamal walked to school that day feeling uneasy but determined. He had done nothing wrong, yet this situation made him feel as if he were hiding a secret that could cause trouble. He tried to focus on his classes and think about a better future. This money could help him apply to college, or at least improve his chances. He could buy books, prepare for exams, and think about a career beyond what he had considered before. As he returned home, Jamal passed the same neighbor again. The neighbor smiled and said nothing, but Jamal felt the man's eyes follow him. He went straight to the apartment and locked the door. He took a deep breath and reminded himself that they had a plan. They would stay calm, spend carefully, and keep their secret safe. With the door locked and his mother by his side, Jamal felt slightly more secure. He understood that his life had changed, but he would have to face these new challenges with care. Over the next few days, Jamal and his mother tried hard to maintain a normal routine. They wanted to avoid drawing any attention. They did not buy anything expensive or make any sudden changes in their habits. Still, some neighbors seemed curious. Jamal noticed people asking small questions, trying to figure out what had changed. He politely brushed off their questions, saying that his mother picked up a short-term job or that they finally managed to catch up on some bills. Inside their apartment, Jamal and his mother planned their moves carefully. They listed the debts they had, unpaid electric bills, old medical expenses, and other small amounts they owed here and there. They decided to pay them gradually, not all at once. Paying everything too quickly might raise more questions. They agreed that slow, careful steps would attract less attention. One evening, Jamal's mother returned from work looking tired. She had heard rumors spreading through the building. Some people guessed they might have won a small lottery prize. Others suspected Jamal's mother received money from a distant family member. Jamal's mother told him about this as they sat at the kitchen table. Jamal felt uneasy. He asked, "Should we address these rumors directly?" His mother shook her head. "We should not give them any more details. Let them believe what they want, as long as they have no reason to suspect the truth." To ease their nerves, they decided to make small efforts to blend in. Jamal continued wearing his old clothes and used the same worn backpack for school. His mother went to work as usual. They made sure to buy only basic food items. They stored some fresh fruit and vegetables at home, but not too much. They tried to keep their purchases looking normal. Jamal also considered looking for a part-time job on weekends. He reasoned that if people saw him working somewhere, it would explain why he seemed less stressed about money. He talked to his mother about this idea. She agreed it might help maintain their cover story. It would also allow them to save more of the money for long-term goals. Jamal checked a few local businesses. He asked at a corner store if they needed help stocking shelves. He visited a small cafe and asked the manager if they hired part-time workers. These were small steps, and he did not get an immediate offer, but it showed that he was still struggling like everyone else. If anyone saw him looking for work, they would have no reason to think he was secretly wealthy. At school, Jamal tried to focus on his classes and homework. He understood that the money should help him secure a better future, not just cover short-term needs. He talked to a guidance counselor about possible scholarship programs. He learned about deadlines and requirements. He realized that he would need good grades and a solid application. He had never considered this path before, thinking it was out of reach. Now, at least, he had some money that could help him prepare for these opportunities. He could buy study guides or pay small application fees if needed. Jamal did not tell anyone at school about his situation. He kept quiet, focusing on his tasks. The thought of improving his future comforted him during moments of stress. Whenever he felt worried about neighbors or rumors, he reminded himself that he now had a way forward. He was not rich, but he had a chance to break free from the cycle of worry and debt that defined their daily lives. Back at the apartment, his mother made steady progress paying off small debts. She mailed out money orders to settle old bills. Each payment was small enough not to raise suspicion. They tracked everything in a notebook to ensure they did not lose control. The money was finite, and they had to use it wisely. Then, one afternoon, a neighbor knocked on their door. Jamal opened it, and the neighbor asked if they could borrow some sugar. Jamal offered a small cup of sugar. The neighbor thanked him, and then asked, "By the way, I heard some people talking. They say you paid your rent ahead of time. Are things better now?" Jamal tried to stay calm. He smiled and said, "My mother found a short-term cleaning job at a different store. We used that extra income to catch up on rent. It might not last, but we're doing okay for now." He kept his voice steady and friendly. The neighbor nodded and said, "That's good news. I'm glad you're doing better." Then the neighbor left. Jamal closed the door and took a deep breath. It was tiring to maintain this careful balance. He wondered how long they would have to keep this up. When his mother got home from work, he told her about the neighbor's visit. She said, "You handled it well. We just need to be patient. Over time, people will lose interest in our affairs. We must not give them a reason to focus on us." Jamal knew she was right. Soon, other events would happen in the building, and people would gossip about someone else. As long as Jamal and his mother did nothing to stand out, the attention would fade. That night, they went over their finances again. They had paid the most urgent bills. The landlord had stopped bothering them. They had a small reserve hidden away, enough to keep them going for a while. Jamal considered this progress. He no longer felt the immediate fear of eviction. He reminded himself that this situation was a gift, but also a responsibility. If he handled it right, he could move forward. If he made careless choices, everything could fall apart. He promised himself to remain careful and think about long-term goals. He had learned that kindness sometimes led to good outcomes, but he also learned that money could bring problems if not managed wisely. A week passed, and life continued at a steady pace. Jamal attended school, did his assignments, and helped his mother with chores. They lived quietly, avoiding unnecessary attention. The neighbors seemed less curious, as no one spotted them making big purchases or showing signs of sudden wealth. Jamal revisited the idea of finding a part-time job. After a few inquiries, he secured a small weekend position at a corner store, helping with stocking shelves and sweeping the floor. The pay was low, but it added a layer of believability to their story. Now, if someone asked how they managed their finances, Jamal could say he worked part-time and his mother picked up extra shifts. This would help explain their stable situation. At the corner store, Jamal's tasks were simple, and he appreciated having some control over how others viewed his life. The store's manager was kind and did not ask personal questions. Jamal focused on doing a good job. He knew that every honest effort he made helped build a stronger foundation for his future. He saved the small earnings from this job, thinking that combined with the hidden money at home, it could help him later. When Jamal returned from work one Saturday, he found his mother sitting at the kitchen table with a pile of papers. She had researched a local program that offered scholarships to students from low-income families. She explained that if he kept his grades up, he might qualify for financial aid. Even if they had some money now, it would not last forever. Scholarships and grants could open doors to a better life and help him gain independence. Jamal listened carefully. He realized that the money they received was not an end, but a means to plan for something greater. He would need to work hard at school and show that he deserved support. He also considered taking some of the money to buy a computer or some study materials. He talked this idea over with his mother, and they agreed that if they were careful, such a purchase would not seem suspicious. Many students had basic laptops for schoolwork, and it was a reasonable investment in his future. A few days later, Jamal and his mother visited a small electronics store a few blocks away, not in their immediate neighborhood. They did not want neighbors to see them making this purchase. They chose a simple second-hand laptop at a reasonable price. Jamal's mother paid in cash. The laptop was not fancy, but it worked well enough for school assignments and research. Back at home, Jamal set up the laptop on their worn kitchen table. He browsed information about scholarship programs, college application tips, and part-time courses that might help him build skills. He even considered learning a trade if college seemed too difficult to afford in the long run. Now, at least, he had options. Meanwhile, his mother kept a close eye on their expenses. She had paid off a few more small debts, always in small amounts. She aimed to improve their overall financial health without raising suspicion. They had no plans to move to a better apartment or buy expensive clothes. Staying under the radar was their top priority. One evening, as they ate a simple dinner, Jamal's mother said, "I am proud of you. You took a chance helping that man on the street when you had almost nothing. You did not expect a reward. Now that we have this money, you remain cautious and focused on the future. That shows maturity." Jamal thanked her. He admitted that it was tempting to spend more freely, but he understood the risk. He saw people in their neighborhood struggle every day, and he knew that sudden wealth could attract trouble. He felt responsible for protecting what they had. He wanted to use it to break their cycle of hardship, not just enjoy a short period of comfort. Another week passed quietly. Jamal kept attending school, and his grades slowly improved. He spent extra time on assignments, knowing that a strong academic record would help him apply for scholarships. He did not tell anyone about his new laptop or his hidden money. He understood the importance of keeping his personal affairs private. The neighbor who had questioned him earlier seemed less interested now. Jamal greeted him politely in the hallway. The neighbor mentioned he had found a part-time job too, and soon they were talking about work schedules and tips for saving a little money. This normal conversation made Jamal feel more at ease. Blending in was working. At night, Jamal often lay in bed thinking about the changes in his life. Just a short time ago, he was close to eviction and afraid of the future. Now he had some financial security, a plan to improve his education, and a chance to shape his future. He knew that it all started with a small act of kindness. The memory of that man on the sidewalk still felt strange and unreal, but Jamal believed it was a turning point in his life. He also knew the journey was not over. They had to remain careful for a while longer. They had to make sure no one discovered their secret. He and his mother had to think long-term, using the money to create stability rather than just short-term relief. Jamal understood that as time passed, the excitement of having extra cash would fade. Life would become about keeping steady habits, building a secure future, and preparing for the day he could stand on his own. He accepted this responsibility and believed he could handle it. Before going to sleep, Jamal wrote down a list of goals in a small notebook. Maintain good grades, research more scholarships, save money from his part-time job, keep living modestly, and continue helping at home. He did not know exactly what the future held, but he felt more in control now. As the weeks passed, the tension in Jamal's life did not disappear completely, but it became more manageable. He maintained his careful approach. He and his mother kept their spending controlled and reasonable. Each time they settled a small debt, they did it in a way that did not draw attention. They never acted as if they had plenty of money. Jamal continued to work his part-time job at the corner store. He went to school, focused on his grades, and searched for scholarship opportunities. Despite their efforts, a few neighbors still seemed interested in their affairs. One morning, as Jamal left for school, a neighbor from the second floor approached him. She said, "I noticed things seem better for you and your mother lately." "Good for you. Did you come into some inheritance?" Her tone was polite, but Jamal could sense that she was fishing for details. He repeated the story they had agreed on. His mother had found extra hours at another store, and he had found a small part-time job. They were working hard to catch up on old bills and save a little money. The neighbor accepted this explanation and walked away. Jamal felt relieved. He knew that as long as he and his mother stuck to the same story, most people would lose interest over time. That afternoon, Jamal's mother came home from work looking thoughtful. She had run into a friend who asked similar questions. It was clear that some people were still curious. Jamal's mother said, "We must remain calm. We cannot let their questions push us into making mistakes. We have nothing to hide except the exact source of the money. The truth would only create confusion and maybe bring danger." Jamal agreed. He understood that revealing the source of the money would sound unbelievable. Even if people believed it, they might demand help or claim it was unfair that they got so lucky. Others might think the money came from a crime. It was safer to maintain their story and be patient. In the evening, Jamal checked his schoolwork. He had a math test coming up, and he knew that improving his grades was important. He planned to apply for scholarships that required a strong academic record. Every good grade mattered. He spent extra time solving problems and reviewing notes. The new laptop made it easier to find practice problems online. Later that week, Jamal and his mother discussed their long-term goals again. They had made good progress paying off past debts, so they decided to store most of the remaining money for future needs. They knew that the money would not last forever, but it could bridge the gap until Jamal finished high school and applied for financial aid. Jamal's mother also reminded him that they should remain careful about who knew what. She decided to limit her conversations with neighbors. She would still be polite, but she would not linger in the hallways or share details of their life. The less information people had, the better. One evening, they heard raised voices in the hallway. It seemed unrelated to them, just two neighbors arguing about something else. However, it reminded Jamal that this building was not always safe or quiet. If someone believed they had money hidden inside, they might try to break in. Jamal checked their door lock and tested the window latches. Everything was secure, but he knew a determined thief could still be a threat. Jamal considered talking to his mother about opening a small bank account in her name. They could deposit at least part of the money there. It might look more normal if she said she had savings from extra work. If anyone asked why they paid rent on time, she could say she was saving money in a bank account. However, they also knew that banking records might draw unwanted attention if they were ever questioned. They had to think carefully before making that move. For now, they decided to keep the money hidden at home, as they had done before. They took small steps to improve security. Jamal's mother placed a chair under the doorknob at night. They considered buying a stronger lock, but that might look suspicious if done suddenly. Instead, Jamal said he would earn a bit more at the corner store and then proposed to the landlord that they pay for a small door repair. That way, it would not seem out of the ordinary. As time went on, Jamal noticed something changing inside him. He no longer felt panic at every question or rumor. He had accepted that this situation required patience and constant caution. He recognized that this was a test of his character and judgment, just as the encounter with the wealthy man had been a test of his kindness. Jamal's mother also seemed calmer. She no longer cried at night or worried aloud about eviction. She still worried about the future, but now they had room to breathe. She had time to think about what would come next, about how Jamal would continue his education and perhaps find a stable career after graduating. One night, they talked about the moral side of their decision. Jamal said, "I sometimes wonder if keeping this money is right. I helped that man without expecting anything. Now we have this gift. Should we share it with others who need help?" His mother thought for a moment and said, "We must take care of ourselves first. We were at the brink of losing our home. If we give away the money now, we might end up in the same situation again. One day, if we are stable, we can help others. For now, we must ensure our own safety." Jamal nodded. He understood her reasoning. The money allowed them to move forward. If they acted too generously too soon, it might undo everything they had built. He thought about the future. If he managed to get a scholarship, do well in college, and find a stable job, he could help others then. The best way to honor the kindness shown to him was to create a secure future and spread kindness responsibly when the time was right. That night, as Jamal lay in bed, he realized he had reached an important point. He had decided to keep using the money wisely, help his family become stable, and focus on building a foundation for a better future. This was not simply luck or charity anymore. It was a responsibility he carried. He knew the hard part was not just receiving the money, but managing it in a way that would truly make a difference in their lives. With that decision made, Jamal felt a sense of purpose. He entered a new phase of his daily life. He would remain careful, but he would also think ahead and use his opportunities to improve his chances at a better future. There was still some tension, but he carried it with more confidence now. A few days later, Jamal visited his guidance counselor at school again. He asked about scholarship deadlines, application essays, and any extra activities that might look good on his record. The counselor suggested he join a volunteer club that helped students with homework. Jamal agreed, feeling that this would not only strengthen his applications, but also allow him to help others in a modest, controlled way. He applied for the volunteer club and began spending one afternoon a week helping younger students with their homework. He kept his focus on his tasks and avoided talking about his personal life. It was a small step toward building a stronger academic profile. At the same time, it reminded him of the value of helping others, something that originally set this whole chain of events in motion. At home, his mother noticed that the neighbors were no longer asking questions as often. Some found new topics of gossip. Others focused on their own problems. Jamal and his mother had avoided any flashy purchases. They continued to pay their bills quietly. The apartment still looked much the same. Their clothes were old but clean. The food they bought was simple and not too expensive. With the immediate pressure off their shoulders, Jamal's mother began to think about small improvements. She mentioned that if Jamal worked at the corner store for a few more weeks, they could replace the broken heater knob, which had been a problem during cold weather. This would not look suspicious. Many tenants fixed small issues over time. It would improve their comfort and still keep them appearing as ordinary residents. Jamal agreed. He saw that acting slowly and carefully was the key. No big changes, no sudden luxury, just small steps that made their lives easier without attracting attention. He also suggested that in a few months, when people stopped paying attention altogether, they might open a small savings account with a portion of the money. That way, if anyone asked, they could say they had been saving from their jobs. As he continued to study, Jamal noticed his grades improving. He felt more focused because he was not constantly worried about being homeless next month. He could think beyond the next meal or the next bill. He saw that financial stability, even if temporary, gave him room to plan and grow. This confirmed that their cautious approach was working. The part-time job at the corner store also helped. Jamal earned a little money each week, which made their story more believable. When he came home with a small paycheck, he showed it to his mother, and they recorded it in the notebook where they tracked all income and expenses. The notebook became a map of their progress, showing how each step, however small, contributed to their security. Sometimes Jamal thought about the wealthy man who gave him the money. He wondered if the man still tested others, or if it was a one-time event. He would probably never know. Jamal understood that what mattered was how he used the chance given to him. He refused to waste it or live carelessly. He wanted to honor the trust that man had shown by rewarding his kindness. In school, Jamal's teachers noticed his improved concentration. One teacher praised him for his better grades on a recent test. Another suggested he consider advanced classes if he maintained this level of effort. Jamal realized that before the money arrived, he was too stressed to think about advanced classes. Now, he was at least considering them. Still, he was careful not to seem too different too quickly. He took these compliments quietly and thanked the teachers without giving away any personal details. At home, he helped his mother plan future expenses. They listed what they might need in a year: possible school supplies, small repairs in the apartment, and maybe even a short online course for Jamal if it helped him gain skills for college. Everything had to be reasonable and look normal from the outside. One afternoon, Jamal took a walk around the neighborhood. He dressed the same as always, keeping his old jacket that he managed to replace with a slightly better but still modest second-hand one. He passed a man sitting on a bench near the bus stop. The man looked tired, maybe hungry, but not as desperate as the one Jamal had helped before. Jamal considered buying him a sandwich, just a small kindness. He thought it through. Could this action attract attention? Probably not, if he kept it simple. He bought a cheap sandwich from a nearby shop and handed it to the man without any explanation or fanfare. The man thanked him. Jamal did not expect a reward. He did it because it felt right, and because he remembered how he once helped someone in need when he had almost nothing. As he walked home, Jamal felt calm. He had learned valuable lessons. Kindness could come back in unexpected ways, but money alone did not solve all problems. Careful planning, steady habits, and a focus on the future mattered more than sudden wealth. His goal was not to appear rich or special, but to build a stable life for himself and his mother. When he returned to the apartment, his mother was reviewing their bills. She looked up and saw that Jamal appeared relaxed. He sat down and told her that things seemed to be settling down. The neighbors were less curious, their debts were under control, and he was improving at school. He said that he still felt responsible for making good use of this opportunity, and she agreed. They did not know exactly what the future would hold, but they had taken several steps in the right direction. They understood that their current state of calm was fragile, yet it was better than the fear and uncertainty they once lived with. Jamal would keep working, keep studying, and keep respecting the gift they had received. Over the next several weeks, Jamal and his mother continued living as they had planned. The extra money remained hidden in the apartment, and they used it slowly. Each month, they paid the rent on time. They kept their grocery choices simple. When small household items needed repair, they waited until it made sense to fix them, never rushing into improvements that might raise questions. Jamal's part-time job at the corner store was steady. He arrived on time, worked his shift, and left quietly. He saved his small paychecks, adding them to a simple stash of funds they kept separate from the hidden money. His mother noticed that he was handling his responsibilities well. He managed to balance school, work, and careful planning at home. The effort was exhausting at times, but he felt it was worth it. At school, Jamal focused on his grades and activities. He volunteered once a week to help younger students with their homework. He also researched scholarship deadlines and wrote down the requirements for each one. He knew that he might need recommendation letters and personal essays. He planned to ask his teachers for guidance when the time came. He understood that his future depended on the steps he took now. One afternoon, Jamal's mother met with the landlord to discuss a small repair that was needed in their apartment. She offered to pay for half of it if it could be done soon. The landlord seemed surprised but pleased. It was a simple repair to fix a drafty window. This improvement did not suggest wealth, but it did show that they were reliable tenants. It made their story of careful saving and extra work more believable. That evening, Jamal's mother told him about the conversation with the landlord. Jamal agreed it was a good move. Showing that they were responsible tenants helped remove suspicion. The landlord might trust them more and question them less. Over time, people had stopped asking where their money came from. Their calm, consistent behavior had worked. As Jamal's studies continued, he noticed his grades climbing. He was not at the top of the class, but he was doing better than before. With his reduced stress at home, he found it easier to concentrate. The laptop allowed him to complete online assignments more efficiently. He even considered taking an advanced math class next semester, something he would never have dared before. When Jamal told his mother about his plan to try an advanced class, she encouraged him. She said, "This is what we wanted from this opportunity. We wanted stability so you could think about improving yourself. If you feel ready, go for it." Jamal appreciated her support. Her confidence in him made him feel stronger. He also kept an eye on the expiration dates of certain scholarship applications. Some would require him to submit essays early. He decided to start drafting his essays soon. He wanted to tell a truthful story about his life, but without revealing the secret of the money. He planned to focus on his personal growth, the challenges he faced after losing his father, and his efforts to help his mother. He would highlight his volunteer work and his improved academic performance. Jamal's life now had a sense of direction. He was no longer drifting from one urgent crisis to the next. He had goals, tasks, and a timeline. This feeling of purpose motivated him each morning. He understood that the money they received was a rare gift that allowed him to escape a cycle of constant worry. In return, he was determined to use it wisely. One quiet evening, as Jamal and his mother ate a simple dinner, they discussed the future once more. He asked her, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I had not helped that man?" She said, "Yes, sometimes I do. Without that money, we might have been forced to leave this apartment. Maybe we would have found another place, but it could have been smaller or in worse condition. We might have struggled more and more. Your chance to study and improve your life would have been harder to achieve." Jamal nodded. He realized that a small act of kindness had changed their path. It was not magic, and they had to work hard to keep this chance alive. They had transformed a sudden gift into a slow but steady path forward. He felt grateful for the opportunity, and he respected it too much to waste it. Before going to bed, Jamal reviewed his school notes and thought about his volunteer session. The younger students he helped were doing better with their reading and math. Helping them gave him satisfaction. It reminded him of why he should keep working hard. He wanted to be someone who not only improved his own life, but also helped others when he could. He went to sleep that night feeling calm. He understood the importance of steady effort. Each day, he and his mother made careful choices. Their situation was no longer desperate. They had breathing room, and that alone was a victory. As the final months of the school year approached, Jamal prepared to apply for scholarships. He studied the guidelines carefully and wrote his personal essays. In these essays, he talked about the hardships he and his mother faced. He mentioned his father's absence, their financial struggles, and how he balanced school with part-time work. He described his volunteer experience, showing that he cared about his community and his younger peers. He did not mention the money he received or the story behind it. He did not need to. The scholarship committees wanted to see determination, improvement, and responsibility. Jamal had all of these qualities now, thanks to the stability he had gained. At home, Jamal and his mother continued to handle their finances thoughtfully. They had settled their old debts. Their rent was always on time. They kept a small emergency fund. They still had some of the original money hidden away, saved for future needs or unexpected problems. They knew it would not last forever, but it had served its purpose. Jamal's mother noticed her son's growing confidence. He spoke more easily about his plans for the future. He considered different career paths. He did not know exactly what he wanted to do yet, but he knew he had choices. This sense of possibility was new to him, and he valued it. He also maintained his part-time job at the corner store. The manager trusted him and often complimented his reliability. Jamal felt proud that he could work honestly and contribute a small part to their household budget. It made their story of careful saving even more believable to anyone who still cared. As the school year drew to a close, Jamal received encouraging feedback from his teachers. They said he had improved steadily throughout the year. He thanked them without revealing the details of his changed situation. Some of his classmates wondered